pushing. It's like literally people grabbing whatever they could, metal trays, pipes, anything they can break off anything. It's a violent place, a very violent place. And that is largely due to, look, there's inactivity, there's overcrowding, it's locked down 24 hours a day and everybody's shoveled into one room, 250 people per room, effectively.
Finally, after 7 months, they found out the charges against them. They were accused of a massive fraud that could see them jailed for a decade. The Australian company Sunland claimed they had swindled it out of $14 million on a land deal at Dubai Waterfront.
It was shock and horror and trying to analyse why, what for. We were just told that we, as you said, we defrauded them and we didn't know when, why or how, so that was even worse.
They were desperate to get out of prison and fight the charges, but the Australian government seemed powerless to help. So supporters of Matt Joyce turned to a former foreign minister turned consultant for hire.
So in the end, my intervention was with the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates, who I know, and I really asked if he could be released from prison on bail pending the trial.
Alexander Downer's letter to the Crown Prince, delivered by the Australian Embassy, made no mention of Marcus Lee.
I just simply wasn't approached about him, so I simply don't know about his case.
He was going to raise the case for the people who were going to pay the $60,000, and we couldn't afford to pay, so we were not involved in that.
And was any money paid in the end?
I can't be sure. I don't know.
What was your reaction, though, to a former foreign minister asking for money to raise the case of Australians trapped in your situation?
I wasn't that impressed.
I didn't charge them in the end, no. And in any case, what's more, it was to be a success fee, if memory serves me well, and had I ever prove what contribution I'd made. The other thing to say about this is I'm not sure how appropriate it is to collect money doing that sort of thing. So ever since I finished up as the Foreign Minister, I have never been paid for any intervention on a consular issue in that way.
After 9 months, they were finally released on bail. Marcus managed to put on a smile for his family in Australia, but the bail had cost him and Julie everything they had.
Well, we had to basically scrape every bit of savings we possibly could together and credit card, and Julie scrambled to put together 300,000 Australian dollars, and that was to sit bonded in the government. And both Julie and my passports had to be basically handed over, surrendered.
She had to surrender her passport.
Yes,
yes, so
absolutely, yes.
Julie, whilst not being charged or not being even alleged to have committed a crime, is trapped here as well.
Like many expatriates, they had come to Dubai to chase a dream. They'd met in the 1980s when he was a labourer and she was a dancer.
Like, I still remember, like, at 17 years old, to get a 23-year-old is a real catch.
They put themselves through university in Queensland, graduated as accountants and found work in property firms. In 2006, they decided to try their luck in one of the biggest construction booms in history.
So when you first came here, Marcus, there was a bit of a buzz in the place?
A buzz, that's an understatement, it was manic.
The new Sheikh, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, had directed the 3 state development companies to get developing.
And like, one thing he did have is vision. You can't deny that.
Mm-hmm. A very big vision.
Yeah, yeah.
The idea was to create a new economy of commerce and tourism to replace Dubai's dwindling oil reserves. Marcus Lee became commercial director on the biggest construction project, Dubai Waterfront.
just even to have the opportunity to work on the largest development in the world is an incredible opportunity. And at the same time, we were just trying to save enough money to buy a house in Australia and just get that little bit ahead, I guess, and be able to get a deposit, and like a lot of Australians, try to buy a house and own a house in Australia.
Dubai Waterfront was meant to double the city's size, filling every centimetre of open coastline.
In the world's fastest growing city, something is happening. Something of unprecedented scale. Something that will spark the next generation of development. It's brought to you by Nakheel, where the vision of Dubai gets built.
The global financial crisis killed the project stone dead, leaving little more than a pile of sand on the Arabian Peninsula.
There was about 1,500 villas, and they were all pre-sold.
And now there's just a half-finished bridge.
Yeah, well, 2 half-finished bridges, because we're in the distance. You might be able to see one up there. One was Samsung and one was TSA, and they were about $1 billion each.
This was the scene of the alleged crime. In 2007, Sunland decided to buy a land plot here called D17. Its aim was to build a giant twin tower that would dominate the waterfront. But according to Sunland, it was told another Australian company, Prudentia, headed by Melbourne businessman Angus Reid, had negotiating rights to the property, effectively first dibs. Based on that understanding, Sunland paid Prudentia $14 million to cede those rights. Sunland was then clear to purchase the plot from Nakheel, and it did. But 2 years later, Sunland became convinced it had been conned into paying that $14 million. It resolved that Prudentia didn't have a saleable hold on D17 to sell. And it accused Angus Reid, Matt Joyce and Marcus Lee of fabricating Prudentia's interest to get the money. All 3 men denied any wrongdoing.
Did you do this?
Of course not. Sunland bought it of their own free will. I was not involved at any time into their arrangements with any other company. Yet, because I wrote a business case report for the board that was approved by the senior management, it's alleged that I've partnered in the so-called crime.
Did you get any money for this?
Not 1 dirham.
Do they acknowledge that?
Yes.
So they acknowledge that you didn't get any money, you just did your job?
Yes.
But you're still trapped in this whole investigation?
That's right. And that's the way, unfortunately, it's probably going to be until it goes right through the court process.
Back in Australia, Rosemary Adams managed to find a lawyer prepared to help Marcus for free. Brisbane lawyer John Snedden had no doubt Marcus was innocent, but he had no illusions that would free him in a court system that could drag on for years.
Oh, it's a very frightening system. I've had so many sleepless nights worrying about what could happen, and lawyers like to control things. It's just ingrained in us, and I appreciate that in every case you put your best case forward and then you lose control. It's in the hands of the judge. In this one, I realised I could control so many things, but we had no control over the system itself, and that's what was terrifying.
6th summer here, and 3rd since this happened.
Yeah, we'll survive.
At least it's not a summer in a jail.
Marcus and Julie were scared the authorities would punish them if they criticised the system. But in 2011, as the trial dragged on interminably, they agreed to talk. Their one condition was that we didn't broadcast anything until they were safely home. None of us could imagine how long that might take.
Our lives are on hold. We're supposed to live on fresh air in the meantime. I haven't had any income now for 2 years. We've pretty well exhausted every saving.
All that we worked for.
Everything we worked for, every saving. Yeah. Lost our family home in Australia now. And even if I'm acquitted, we've still paid a massive penalty.
Marcus and Julie's families were suffering too. Marcus's mother, Carol McKinley, lives in Sydney's Sutherland Shire. She couldn't tell her own mother of Marcus's arrest, knowing it would be too much for her to bear.
She was 91 at that stage and not well. We thought it was better she just didn't know about it, and we would print photos of Marcus and Julie and put them up in the nursing home, so Happy Easter Nan and things like that. So she wasn't aware.
She died without seeing him again. Carol's second husband, Alan, the only father Marcus had ever known, was desperate to see him. He was battling cancer.
My husband, when he did pass away, he was very distressed at only being able to speak to Marcus once when he was in the hospice. On the day that he was admitted, Marcus rang him on the mobile phone and they said goodbye.
And he couldn't...
Sorry.
He couldn't come to the funeral, of course. He couldn't do anything like that.
No. And they knew that it was the last conversation they'd have.
A few things start to drive you crazy about Dubai in a while.
This is just standard. Look, he's still driving over the middle of the road.
4 years into their ordeal and they were going nowhere fast.
Anyway, Eric, can you get me in that suitcase that you're leaving with today? They seem to be able to have as many delays as they want.
And it wasn't just the foreign legal system they were fighting. The Australian company Sunland was turning the screws from afar.
Sunland sent along their lawyers to 30 court hearings, and they would go along and sit in the gallery, sometimes bringing their families, like it was a sporting event. Their lawyer, at the end of the prosecution case, stood and shouted that Marcus and the other defendants should be convicted and they should be imprisoned and they should be given the maximum jail term.
Next week, unpicking the infamous deal and chasing the millions.
Did you keep half the money as they claim?
No, that's one of Sunland's lies that they continue to push.
So you wouldn't be scared of Matt Joyce suing you?
I love that. Please bring it on. Please, if you see him, say that is the only message that Sohail has for you. Bring it on.
Despite their certainty of innocence, there were times when Marcus and Julie Lee wondered if they'd ever see Australia again.
She rang me one day and said, "We're not going to survive. We've just got nothing left to give."